Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me, as always, for this podcast are Anthony DeBundo and BJ Cunningham. And before I bring those two gentlemen in, a reminder that Wondergoal is presented by Bet365, and Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. It believes that every sport, But before I bring those two gentlemen in, and we go on a handicapping journey through the midweek fixtures in the Premier League, and touch on some European action as well, maybe a little AFCON update from BJ. But before we get to that fun, let's pay some bills and remind you that Wondergoal is presented by Bet365, and Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. It believes that every sport should be epic, every tournament, every game, every point, every play, from the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today with promo code ACTION, and you get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never an ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 or older. You must be present in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, New Jersey, Ohio, or Virginia. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, Kentucky, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia, or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms and conditions apply. And of course, a very special welcome to all the listeners who maybe are here for the first time, looking to fill the gap between the AFC and NFC championships and the Super Bowl. Maybe you heard about the way we broke down the Australian Open at the end of the last time I was on this pod and nailed it. And that's why you're here. You want more tennis tidbits. Maybe we'll talk a little Sud de France, Montpellier coming up, indoor hardcourt season. This is one of my favorite times on the sporting calendar because the Premier League stretch run starts. Then we get to the knockout phases of Champions League, the hockey, playoff races heated up. Of course, listen to Line Change on the Action Network podcast family. Tennis season gets into full swing. The Australian Football League season starts. We just saw a monumental upset, Anthony, this past weekend in cricket. The West Indies beat Australia in a test match. Shamar Joseph, look him up, basically was just playing, and I quote, jungle cricket in Guyana, and now might be the best cricketer in the world for the West Indies. Guy had never seen like an iPhone before, maybe until like he was 15. Crazy stuff.
I think the Twitter algorithms got our Twitters mixed up because I got a bunch of For You stuff about the West Indies cricket win.
It was an incredible upset. Incredible. And it was this guy's story.
It's Michael liking every tweet. That's
exactly.
why it's why it's
Michael things you may not be interested in.
Shamar Joseph, please read the stories. It's not every, maybe once a year you hear about a story and it kind of stops you in your track. This one is one. But we're not here to talk about Shamar Joseph and West Indies. I should be wearing my West.
Yannick Sinner.
We're not here to talk about Yannick Sinner. We're here to talk about some footy. We're here to talk about the Premier League. We're here to talk about Nottingham Forest and Arsenal at the top of the show. Forest is plus 750 at home, hosting Arsenal minus 250, and the draw here pays out plus 350. I think it's pretty tempting here, Anthony. The number on Forest. Nuno. The underlying numbers look okay, like better than they were going. A little bit of a new manager bump, perhaps 2 wins, 2 losses under the former Wolves and Spurs manager. And the Arsenal defensive numbers are starting to come back down to earth. And for a team that you can't really count on them to run up a score. That's a problem, right? You want their margin for error to be a little bit wider. So what do you think here,
Anthony? Did you not watch Palace? What are we talking about here?
Little
5.
Yeah.
5-0.
I know. Yeah. What was that? When's the last time they've done that in the Premier League? Was it?
It's just getting started doing it.
Yeah. We'll see. Well, before we get to you, BJ, Anthony, your thoughts here. I think that the odds are a little too wide.
Do we know, is Arteta in or out, BJ?
He's in. That was a fake. That was a fake report.
So he is not.
It's because the Barcelona job apparently is up for grabs now, which I still don't believe it's because Xavi's truly done. So people think that he's going to take a sabbatical and then take the Barcelona job, but that report has been since corrected and is fake, Anthony.
Okay. Yeah. So there's some injury question marks here for Nottingham Forest that I do think matter. I am concerned about their defense. We talked about their defensive situation right now. Last week, we talked about the Brentford Forest game, which somehow closed 2.5. That was a bad number. And, Bali, Aurier, Koyate, Niakate, and Aina, and Sangare pretty much like the entire defensive outfit / ball winning unit, like all of their talented players are going to be still at AFCON, most likely. So you've got a really tricky situation where, like, can they stop Arsenal? I'm not really that confident in that. And you mentioned it, Michael. Like, we talked about how elite the Arsenal defense was, and the market has taken notice of that. At what point do we say, is it possible to be as good as they have been? And is there naturally just going to be like a small drop off in their defensive numbers? And should we read more into that maybe than saying like, oh, this attack can't score, which is kind of like the prevailing Square narrative now. I feel like everybody's kind of caught on to that. Like, it's not exactly rocket science to be like, well, Arsenal have been inconsistent in front of goal, which is true. Like, they're running, even with their XG, they've got a lot of key players running cold. Their set pieces, though, have been dynamite, and they've been really good with the pick plays. It's becoming more and more prevalent in soccer. You're seeing teams like run like off-ball screens like it's the NBA, and then getting their tall players free headers. Pretty much, like, if you go back and look at the game they played against Palace, Arsenal didn't create much from open play. It was set piece, goal, set piece, goal. It was like throwing alley-oops and then dunking it in, and then a counterattack off of a corner from Forest, or off from Palace. So, I lean toward Forest here. The attack has been better, but also Ilanga might miss now. Like, he's been out. So if I had to bet this, I would take Forest at home. It's just a lean for me. I'm kind of hoping that we get more Arsenal money and I can get like a flat 1.5, in which case I will bet the trees for sure. I don't
it's trending
think
that way,
but it's a goal and a quarter now. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, this is high for Arsenal. I don't know who out there is going to be laying this type of price to Arsenal, maybe putting them in a parlay or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you hit nail on the head, Anthony, is that Arsenal has kind of become, dare I say, what Tottenham was last year, where they just kind of struggled from open play and just were really, really good on set pieces, and that was just kind of it. And set pieces are obviously a huge part of the game. So, it's not like, you can score from whatever method possible, but it's nice to be able to actually create and sustainably score from open play, which Arsenal has struggled with. Party might be back for this match. I'm not sure. Maybe it's the next match, but I know he's getting really close to his return, which I think is really going to transform Arsenal in their ability to not only, the defensive numbers have been kind of going up a little bit. You mentioned it, 1.2 to Fulham, 1.4. There was a penalty in there to West Ham, even 1 to Liverpool. I mean, they're still fine. They're just not, in terms of like elite what we've been seeing. So for me, it's a pass. I only have Arsenal minus 160. So it's definitely tempting on Forest, but like you mentioned, Anthony, their whole defense is out. So who's actually going to stop them if they go in transition? So it's a pass for me.
Right. When we talk about like regression, and we talk in absolute sometimes, but like we're literally talking about like, should Arsenal be giving up 0.4, 0.6 XG, or is it going to be closer to like 1 when they go on the road? Because there is a big difference overall in the long run over a team that's allowing, like last year, Arsenal was right around 1 per 90. This year, they've been much better than that. So like if they can maintain, can they maintain under 1 per 90 in the Prem? That's a really fascinating situation. Right now, they're close to like 0.8. Last year, again, like I said, closer to 1. So can they maintain, those incredibly dominant numbers? I'm just kind of skeptical. And we have seen Forest be at least have more ideas in transition. They've scored a bunch of goals from outside the box, right? Like they had the banger against Brentford to open the scoring. Gibbs White hit one from 20 yards against United, but they have looked more lively in transition. But again, like it's hard to get against Arsenal. So overall, I think this is Forest or nothing, and we move.
They've also been trying to build out of the back a little bit more, not as playing as direct. And if you try to build out of the back against Arsenal, like Arsenal literally, our pal Mark Stats put out a nice graphic, and Arsenal's literally the best counter-pressing team in the entire world right now. So good luck.
I could just see like it's 2-1 Arsenal, Forest are trying to build, and then Turner makes a bad pass, 3-1 Arsenal in like the 85th minute, and then I'm sitting there like shit out of luck.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to these matches. The first 5 we'll talk about are on Tuesday afternoon. Next up is Fulham and Everton. Fulham sitting plus 145 at home. Everton underdog on the road at plus 200. The draw here is plus 225. Of course, these two teams met week 1. Everton dominated in a 1-0 loss. A sign of things to come. And I think it's going to be the same old. I was on vacation, and I come back, and I think it's going to be the same kind of conversation that we've had, except the only difference here is that when I went away on vacation, Everton got slapped with another FFP charge. So we'll see where that lands. My one concern here is that the Toffees look spent. That Luton Town match was scrappy and ugly, and it just didn't look like they had the legs in the FA Cup over the weekend in a loss at home. So that is concerning, but I think just as a numbers fight, it's got to be Everton or nothing here, BJ.
Yeah, I have a trivia question. I'm going to let Anthony go first because I think, Michael, you know the answer to this one. When Everton played Fulham on match week 1, who was starting up top for Everton?
All right, so Calvert-Lewin was not fit.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they hadn't bought Beto yet, so I'll go Neil Maupay.
Yep, Neil Maupay. And he missed 2 huge chances, too.
Yep.
That's what he does.
And then he got sold.
Right.
Sold?
Sold to Brentford eventually.
Back to Brentford.
Well then again, so obviously Everton dominated the match, but they played again in the League Cup, and Everton was by far the better team in that match as well. XG was 1.4 to 0.4. I mean, and Fulham had an own goal and just really honestly did nothing. So basically we've had 2 matches of sample size. To be fair to Fulham, they both were at Goodison Park, so they were playing away from home. But again, Everton dominated both of those matches. Now, the concerning things here for Fulham, well, number one, I didn't think they were that bad against Newcastle in the FA Cup over the weekend. I thought they actually dominated the match for large stretches of it. I thought they built out of the back very well. But what happened was they conceded 2 goals off of set pieces. And that's something they have struggled with this season. And that's a bad recipe when you're going against Everton, who has scored the second most goals off of set pieces. And for the Fulham offense, I mean, we've obviously talked about them at length on this podcast. They went through that crazy finishing run for 4 matches. Overall for the season, they're at 1.13 non-penalty XG per 90 minutes. They're doing a really poor job of just getting into the opponent's penalty area. They're dead last in final third to box entry conversion rate, second fewest touches in the penalty area, behind only Sheffield United. So for Everton, who's one of the best out-of-possession teams, I think, in the Premier League right now, with their ability to not only press high if Fulham wants to try to go out of the back and cause a lot of problems, that's how they created a lot of their chances against Fulham in that very first meeting, or their ability to sit in a defensive block and defend their penalty area. I mean, Everton still has allowed the fewest big scoring chances in the Premier League. So I don't really see a method here of why Fulham should be this big of a favorite at home. I have Everton as a road favorite here. I mean, their underlying numbers have been significantly better than Fulham's. So give me Everton. Draw no bet. I mean, you can find them as high as plus 120 right now, which I think is kind of a crazy price. And if you want to play them on the money line, I mean, they should not be over 2-1 here on the road.
Yeah, so, Everton have not been good in the last 4 to 5 matches. And, I think the point you made, Michael, about the fatigue, I think is certainly something, right? Because we talked about this Everton team and we're like, look, coming into the year, they don't have a ton of depth, but when the first 13 to 14 players are healthy, they have real talent here and we trust Dyche. And they clearly had a period where things were going good. And they were, getting priced up at this really elite level. Relatively speaking, of course, 7th, 8th best team in the Prem. And, now as they reach this point where they look really dead on their feet and they don't have the depth to rotate, is the market overvaluing them? I don't think so, right? Because like you said, BJ, the number here is just not really conducive to backing Fulham. But I do think you can play against Everton's legs and grab the under here because Fulham have been good. Their last 2 games against Liverpool in the Cup, Liverpool played a pretty strong team in that match. And then they played Newcastle, and you can see all of the problems. Fulham's attacking group, that they were under 1 XG against Newcastle today, or yesterday. They were not. I mean, that's a Newcastle team that hasn't stopped anybody for months. And then the match prior against Liverpool, they did rotate some of their defenders at home. You come in down a goal, then you go down early. You're down 2 goals for the entire sequence. You don't even really get to 1 XG either. So I do think there's real questions about Fulham's attack, as you mentioned, and I think Everton's attack is kind of just like running on fumes right now and struggling. So away from home, I think Dyche is going to play this a little more conservatively, and thus I don't even show value on the number, but I like under 2.5 at -120. I think it's a little bit high. If you go back and look at like even the last meeting, Fulham generated nothing, and Everton, played down a goal most of the match and still didn't get much going for them. So I think both these attacks are kind of just like struggling right now, and this is an ugly, ugly, ugly Premier League under that will probably lose.
Yeah, and they went out in a 4-4-2 with Beto and Dominic Calvert-Lewin against Luton Town. It just didn't work, but they really don't have
the BJ parlay.
Yeah,
you should have been there, Michael. BJ parlay two FA Cup favorites on Saturday.
Yeah. It was like the smartest thing I've ever done.
The second worst bet.
And I'm sure it hit. I'm sure it won because bets like that always win.
No,
always win.
Everton would win it.
To be fair, it was +150. Let's not act like I was parlaying it to be like -120. Anthony's overreacting. And hey, guess what? Brighton won 5-2. So at least I got one of the two, right?
But
Everton had chances.
They did, and my point is, I think it's actually good that they did that. As Dyche said, like we learned something that doesn't work, because you could make the argument without Decore and their squad being as thin as it is right now, that's probably the way they'd have to play. But now that they saw that it didn't work, it's they'll bin it and try something a little bit better. Okay, BJ, you're the only one with anything here on Luton Town. They're +350 home underdog to Brighton, -150, and the draw is +333.
Yeah, I love over 3 +105 right here. I mean, the thing about it is these Brighton matches, given their style of play right now, it's just so game state dependent on whether if we get an early goal, then teams have to come out of this, slow defensive, like cutting off central progression block that, Sheffield United tried to play and they got scored on, and then obviously all chaos ensued. I mean, Luton Town, it's like the same story every single week. They're just slow blocks, not good enough to keep good offensive teams at bay, even if they are at home. Last 12 Premier League matches, they have conceded 32.5 expected goals, 20 big scoring chances, and have only held 2 of those 12 opponents under 1.5 expected goals. And it was Burnley and a very tired Newcastle team. The biggest problem is, like I said, when they fall behind, they'll have to come out, they'll have to press Brighton, they'll have to give Brighton what they want, and then Brighton will basically just play right through them. When playing from behind this season, Luton Town is allowing 2.13 XG per 90 minutes. But offensively for Luton Town, I think this is kind of a decent matchup for them because of how obsessed De Zerbi is with playing through the middle. So when they do win the ball, what does Luton Town want to do? They want to get the ball wide, and they want to send in crosses. So there is acres of space out wide to be had against Brighton, especially in transition. I mean, Brighton's still not a great defensive transition team. They're still dead last in Premier League in final third box entry conversion rate allowed. In the Brighton offense, they've faced a lot of low blocks, and they're actually improving offensively as well. 13 goals in their last 5 matches in all competitions, 10.8 expected goals. De Zerbi's starting to play a little bit more aggressive, which is an encouraging sign to see if you're somebody who likes to back over for them. So projected 3.7 goals for this match, so I like over 3 at +105.
Okay. Palace and Sheffield United up next. Of course, another Tuesday matchup here. This is about as ugly as they come. Palace laying -163 at home. Sheffield United traveling to Selhurst Park as a +550 underdog. The draw here is +260. All three of us are passing here. The one little tidbit I would say is it's really, 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 really hard to get us to bet Crystal Palace at -130.
Yeah, without, especially no Elise.
Yeah.
Jordan Ayew should be back because Ghana got knocked out of the Africa Cup of Nations. But yeah, one of your best players is out. That's tough to get behind Palace.
I would. I mean, Sheffield United's won twice. They've lost 15 out of 21 this season. And to their credit, 2 of their 4 draws have come in the last 5 matches. So, Chris Wilder, I guess, is getting relative improvement, and Palace has not been good lately or generally this season at all. So, I mean, if you want action on the game, I would say maybe sprinkle
Some
Sheffield
draw.
United, but it's hard to get there,
Draw.
Anthony.
It's
Yeah,
hard to get it,
draws.
like
Yeah,
draw
like a
with draw.
0-0 is actually not a bad bet here.
Go crazy. Yeah, I mean, I use back, right? And that's the problem for them is like, okay, does Jordan Ayew matter? Not really, but like the downgrade, yeah, without him certainly feels
There's
like
nobody behind him. Yeah,
there's nobody behind him. Like it's like Jeffrey Schlupp and then like some kids.
Jeffrey Schlupp is a Premier League champion.
That's
true.
true.
He is.
And he was decent in 2015, but 2016, but not anymore. I think from the reality of like, okay, this Sheffield team in a home run spot at home against like very injured / missing players, West Ham, like still gave up over 1 non-penalty XG, like barely like that spot should have been like come out and really give something. And they have been better under Wilder. The market power ratings like have them just like a smidge worse than Luton Town now, which, was not true in the first half of the season that we've played so far. So, credit to them for improving. I talked about all the stats last time. They went from conceding 2.5 XG per match to about 1.6 since Wilder came in. And their XG difference per 90 went from over -1, like worse than -1 per match, to -0.5 now. So it's, again, like it's marginal improvement. It's the classic new manager situation. They're playing very defensive, and like Palace beat the shit out of them in the first meeting of the season and really dominated. The number isn't quite good enough for me to get involved on Sheffield, though. So I think if you want to get involved, it's maybe like just take some draw, like chase a price, as opposed to just taking like +1, -110, and then being like, well, hopefully they only win by 1 if they get the lead, because they could just no show, and Palace could get a get right home win here. Roy's in some trouble.
Roy's never in trouble.
I think he actually is. It feels like
he's.
I don't know. Did you see who was in the stands at the last match?
I did see.
Michael, did you see who was in the stands?
No. Who was it?
Ram Potter was in the stands.
He would never do
Well,
that.
There's some better jobs opening up right now. Plus, it's going to be Steve Cooper anyway, so no.
Arsenal opening. Real Madrid might open. You never know.
Real Madrid
hiring Graham Potter. No.
First of all, even if Roy gets handed a mandatory sabbatical, he'll be back he'll be back by St. Patrick's Day.
The second that Crystal Palace sniff the relegation fight, he'll be back.
No, he's not.
By the way, they're not like totally safe. I mean, they're like pretty safe because they're better than the teams chasing them. Like they've got 5 points on Luton, and like it's hard to see Luton being 5 points better than Palace rest of season. But they're at the point now where like 2 or 3 bad results, and you could start to say, well, actually, we're kind of in some shit here. And they were not competitive with Arsenal. They were, like I mentioned this before their game last week. I said like Palace have scored 4 goals in their last 5 matches, and 3 of them were by Elise and Eze.
Yep.
Now Elise's hurt again.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could also flip that script about Palace a bit. Like that's been a tough schedule.
It has.
So
I feel like
we'll
do
see
this every time with Palace. Like they
exactly.
they get beat, and then we're like, well, actually, they put a lot of the good teams.
Yeah.
And then we forget, like, oh, they come home against Sheffield, they win like 2-0, and that's just like how it goes.
All right, last game on Tuesday is Aston Villa taking on Newcastle. Villa is odds on at home, -110. Newcastle traveling as a +260 underdog, and the draw here is 3-1. Villa is 5 points off of the pace set by Liverpool right now in the Premier League. Liverpool's on 48. City, Arsenal, and Villa on 43. City's played 1 fewer game than basically everybody in the league. It doesn't feel as straightforward with Villa anymore. The loss to United, the 0-0 against Everton, even the win over Burnley to close out 2023. That said, I'm so sick and tired of trying to figure out Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so sick and tired of it. So BJ, I think you probably are onto the right path here with your bet.
Yeah, I like over 3, which is around even money right now. Or excuse me, minus 112. So pretty much two different type of stuff going on, two different type of things going on for Newcastle out of possession right now. They either try to press with their normal 4-3-3 that has made them really, really good over the last few years and why we've backed them so many times and why they've caused teams so many problems, which is what they did to Aston Villa in the first match of the season. But the press isn't hitting home right now. They're getting played through over and over again. No, Joelinton has been a big loss for them. He's their most physical presser. Huge, huge loss. He is the one, in the front three press, he is the one covering the, central midfielder trying to aid and build up. So without him, it makes it a lot more difficult for Newcastle to continue pressing like they normally do. So what Eddie Howe has done is he switched his team to a 4-5-1 passive defensive structure out of possession. And the Manchester City match was very, very evident that they are just not good at all in that, because what they try to do, they try to cut off all these passes around the center part of the pitch. But what happens time and time again is there's too much space in between the two defensive lines. So City would just move guys around in there, they'd exploit that space, and they would just create chance after chance after chance. And good build-up teams will do that to you. If you decide to play passive, a team like Aston Villa, who is good in build-up, can exploit that. But the other side of the coin, Michael, is that if Newcastle decide to press like they normally do, they can cause problems for Aston Villa, who are a little bit shaky across their back line. It looks like Pau Torres is going to be out for this match, who's their best ball-carrying center back. So I think no matter what Newcastle decides to do out of possession, that it creates a lot of chaos and can give Aston Villa either a good chance offensively, or it can cause a lot of turnovers. And either way can create a very back and forth type game. Newcastle, like I mentioned earlier against Fulham, their only 2 goals they scored were off of set pieces. Well, guess what? They're second in the Premier League this season in XG per set piece, and Aston Villa is dead last. So at least they have an advantage there. So with how bad Newcastle has been defensively, I mean, they've conceded the most expected goals of anybody in the Premier League since the beginning of November. And where they're kind of just stuck between these two different out-of-possession structures that both really aren't working. I think the total's too low. I mean, I projected 3.6 goal for this match, so over 3 minus 112 is good enough for me to play it.
So crazy how quickly this team deteriorated into just
it's terrible. It's so bad.
And it's all XG per shot is just through the roof. They're giving up an average XG per shot of 0.19 since the Bournemouth match.
Yeah, gosh.
The average in the Prem is 0.1. So it's almost double. I mean, think about that. Think about how insane that is. Now, there was the Liverpool game. That was a little bit of an outlier, but their overall XGA numbers, you mentioned it, BJ, like it's really hard when a team has such a dramatic change, because usually like the changes over the course of a season are marginal, and you're like, well, it's just a blip in the radar, and like this is like not. This is like this is the Titanic hitting the iceberg, and they have no answer. The ship is sinking, and at what point do we try to buy? I don't know. I already tried once.
Yeah, no, I've tried 4 times.
I've tried 100 times. I feel like.
And actually, well. Yeah, they give up.
This is like it. If Newcastle has any sort of life with their high press, like this is the match where they have to show it, and they haven't shown it whatsoever.
If you were to design a team to pick on Villa, like a team that has good runners 1-on-1, running at people, like Almiron's going to be out, but like I don't know, they can do better. Like it's not a terrible matchup on paper, but it's not even a good number.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It's not even a good number. Like. Yeah. The beginning of the season, right? Newcastle was like minus 130 at home. And we were like, well, Newcastle's much better than Villa.
Right. Yeah, I think the reputations have flipped here.
BJ laid it, and like they won in dominant fashion, went way over. And now you would say, well, of course, Villa is a much better team than Newcastle. And like I've been a Villa skeptic all year, but there's no way in hell you could make that case that they're not. So why is it only minus 110? Is the market underrating Villa now? Like the whole luck narrative, like are they underrating Villa?
I don't know.
We've been saying for weeks that like, why is the market so low on Newcastle, right? Because we were like, well, it's only been a couple of games. And we've now determined that like the market was probably right and ahead of us on Newcastle being shit. So then why now are we saying why is Villa so cheap against Newcastle when we've been saying for forever that the market's been underrating Newcastle? So it's kind of interesting that how it all comes together. But so the market has Villa right now. Where do you think if you just take like expected points for the rest of the season, you can pull up the betting odds, like live point total odds. So for the rest of the season, there's not really schedule adjustment because nobody's played that many games. Where do you think the betting market power rates Aston Villa out of 20?
6th, 5th.
Yeah, I would say probably behind Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Spurs, and
Brighton
or Chelsea, maybe even.
Yeah.
They essentially have them in a 4-way tie with Newcastle, Villa, Brighton, and United rest of season. With Chelsea just ahead.
United.
Chelsea just ahead, Spurs just ahead, and then obviously the big three way ahead. So the market has Villa essentially power rated to get 1.5 points per game the rest of the season. They've already gotten 2, and their non-penalty expected goal difference is better than all of those teams in that bunch, and only marginally worse than Chelsea's, who's way ahead of them. So I think the market is catching on to some Villa skepticism, and I don't really think there's any value in fading them just as a result of that, especially at home. We've talked about road Villa. Like at home, I'm less interested. So I lean with BJ as well, but no play for me.
On to Wednesday, City and Burnley. Manchester City is a puny -1,000 favorite. Burnley 16-1.
16-1.
16-1.
BJ, where do you have this? I love doing these like how bad can it get projections. Where do you have Burnley?
What on the money line?
Yeah.
25-1.
Well, I'm only at 22.50, so we might have to.
So there's so much value.
So much value. 16-1.
A lot of value on City here.
It's a good point though about how the books kind of like cheat you on those big money lines because they know there's like underdog bias. People are like, oh, 16-1, one match, like surely, but really,
I do think that's a relatively new phenomenon. I mean, Brentford was 19-1, right? So, and Brentford was a much better team than
shop around as always.
Yeah,
but yes, no, for sure, it's definitely been. You've seen the markets kind of change, and if you go to like Asian handicap lines at some books, like it's gotten kind of wild with you're laying like 140 on one side and laying like 105 on the other.
It's good news is that Bet365 doesn't do that to you, Anthony.
They don't, but they're not in Pennsylvania or New York.
That's true.
I'll have to get excited about that. Maybe coming to Pennsylvania soon.
Other books will juice you out of range for Asian handicap, but not Bet365.
True.
I don't have anything here.
Yeah, pass.
All right, let's move on.
Draw 11-1.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, do you want to sell us on it?
You want storylines, Vincent Kompany?
It is a better, just from like a pure number perspective. I do think it's cheap.
But I mean, I have to draw it.
I'm not going to sit here and make like a soccer case for why Burnley is going to be competitive.
You don't want to talk about Vincent Kompany's system being conducive to the draw here against Pep?
No.
Okay. So
I've watched them try to defend low blocky or whatever.
Maybe it's a 4-4 draw. I guess if you're going to bet the draw, you might as well just bet like an exact score, 3-3 or something. Really go after it.
I mean, look, I'm just saying, 11-1. I've seen worse bets, and I think it should be like 865.
We've all made worse bets.
I got 820 here, Anthony. So there you go.
What are we doing? We got.
Look at this.
That's like that's a good solid edge, And
all right, there's your grouper for the week. I mean, it's City Burnley draw 11-1.
11-1. All right, so are we betting it now?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna bet it.
Perfect.
11-1.
I think if you would ask me,
zero analysis on that. I think the market has Burnley rated 18th. I agree. The market has City rated first. I agree. There's no reason to have any chance of winning this match or being competitive, but sometimes the ball bounces weird.
Yeah.
And
the first 5 minutes will be fun.
Well, think about it too, right? Because Burnley was 8-1 at home in match week 1, and you guys, were
I mean, we got caught up. We got caught up in the positive momentum.
The idea that we didn't know it yet, but that like that Dutch total football was coming to the Prem, and the market hadn't caught on yet, and the Burnley was going to be. Although BJ was out on them, I have to respect that.
I was, and by the way, there's going to be Leicester's coming back up, and they're playing in the exact same style. So be careful, everybody.
Yeah, but Leicester actually has like
I know they do.
higher
And
floor of talent.
I know. And
they're, like, actually good.
we'll talk more championship as we get later on in the season.
All right. Tony Spurs are a -163 favorite at home to Brentford. 4-1. Thomas Frank's Bees are traveling as a decent underdog here, and the draw is +320. This is a.
Do we need
you
to
could
talk about this?
Set your clock to this one. Jesus.
The biggest goalkeeping mismatch in the Premier League. That's scary.
That's right.
Yeah.
Blackett is.
But I mean, if you're getting to that point with a 4-1 underdog, I think you're okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, Brentford, or excuse me, Tottenham, like bad at home against City, like completely uncompetitive, couldn't get a shot. Laying a full goal, I'm not close to that. I'm like -131. So happy to take Spurs. I have downgraded Brentford a good bit because I do think the injuries matter. But at a certain point, like they just run ungodly bad. And even with bad goalkeeping, they shouldn't have run as bad as they've run. Like their attack has been way underperforming. And guess who's back?
Mm-hmm.
Our man.
That goal was beautiful.
The vibes were so good.
Oh, yeah.
Tony, anytime we hit last time, right? It was +130. Maybe this time we try to up the stakes, roll it over, like Tony first.
2+.
Tony 2+.
Tony 2+.
Tony 2 times. That's what they call him.
Against Tony's Tottenham.
Against Tony's Tottenham. Okay.
Here's the thing, though.
I mean,
if you're somebody who's new and maybe just doesn't understand what we're going to be doing.
Pretty good on set pieces usually. That's
Brentford.
Always fun against a Tottenham team that's been good on set pieces as well. And I think that Tottenham still without Sonny, who's still going to be at the Asian Cup. Like you could just now see the scenario, right? Like we know how good Werner's been, and I talked about Werner on the FA Cup episode when I was like, look, like he's been productive for them, but the midfield's been poor with Sarr and Basuma out. Madison's still kind of working his way back to full fitness. And then you just see the scenario where it's like, oh, we have Werner instead of Son taking the shots, so they don't go in. And then, this game ends 1-1. So I like the Bees, of course, and I'll back them again.
The Bees. All right. Liverpool and Chelsea up next. This is another spot. I think all of us will be in agreement on the underdog. Liverpool -175. Tony's pet team. Good God. I mean, the guy just crying on the phone to me the other day because Jurgen Klopp made it all about himself. Called me. Woke me up.
I was up watching
Medvedev
at like 5 a.m. And usually I wake up to news, right? Because, we're 6 hours behind, 5 hours behind London. And I thought it was like a bit that Klopp was leaving. And, look, as a lifelong Liverpool fan, it's been an amazing run. I can't wait to see who's next. I feel like Xabi Alonso is going to take the job and cost us all money next year, probably. But yeah. I think he feels like I think he's like -110 at one book to become the next manager. But that creates a very exciting dynamic down the stretch here, right? Like Klopp's last run, doing it for him.
God, the guy just loves to make it about himself. The guy just loves to make it about himself. It's crazy, this guy.
Still win the quadruple.
God, I can't wait for him to be out of the league.
You're gonna miss him.
No. How could you not like Jurgen Klopp?
Oh, so easily. I could show you one still image of him and his charges holding hands, saluting the away end in a 2-2 draw against West Brom, probably before you started watching. But right in the beginning of his tenure, they drew West Brom 2-2, and he gathered his team and did like the whole hey thing, holding hands. The guy is
he's a culture builder.
As cringe as they come.
He's a culture builder.
He's as cringe as they come. Yeah, I could build a culture with those kind of players. Give me Mo Salah. Give me that roster. I'll build a culture with them. Come on.
Where
people think he's like drawing blood from a stone. He's got good players. It's very easy to coach teams with good players.
He always had great talent is but like he did it in Germany before that. Like
yeah, he coached Dortmund. Great talent. Great academy. Look at those teams. Lewandowski. God.
Where we're gonna find. Where we're gonna see him next, Michael. I hope you know, right?
Inter Miami.
No. He's gonna coach. He's gonna coach the German national
Germany.
team.
Yeah, yeah. All right, we'll talk about that on in 2025.
2026.
Anyways, we like Chelsea here. I think, but I honestly, Anthony, you did make one good point there. It's going to be fascinating down the stretch, and I think that this is going to seep into the market.
Oh yeah,
I think it's
it already
gonna,
has.
This
Liverpool was
is
minus 150. The announcement happened. They went
my
to minus
Norwich bets
170.
would have preferred if they had rotated. I thought they were going to rotate, and then the Klopp announcement happens, and I'm like, well, I don't think we're getting a rotated Liverpool. They put everybody in,
Yep.
and Norwich team total cash, but the plus 2.5, man, it was devastating. Anyway,
I like Chelsea here though. I just think
too high.
same song and dance with them, right? Like they play up because they
Right.
play a style that's conducive to slowing down and getting space on the break against these top teams. I think like I'll bet Chelsea plus 1.25 when they go to City. I'll bet Chelsea plus 1 at Arsenal. I'll bet Chelsea plus 1 at Liverpool. But am I going to lay Chelsea -1 against like Fulham?
Wolves or Everton? Yep.
No.
Exactly.
That's just kind of where I'm at with this team. But Palmer's been really good, and we talked about him just a couple days ago, so I'm not going to repeat myself. But I do think they're kind of short a striker right now without Jackson. Like they don't have like a true guy.
It doesn't sound like Chelsea.
But when you're playing on the break, it's less relevant
Yep.
than having like a true target man or like a true 9. I think they can kind of get away with like this collection of wingers and 10s. So yeah, Blues for me. I project Liverpool closer to -130 as well. Same thing with me and Tottenham and Brentford and Liverpool and Chelsea. Like these games are. I just think the favorite's a little bit overvalued at home, and like I get why. Again, big goalkeeping edge too, but like I'm gonna ride with the dog.
Yeah, I think it's the thing with Chelsea. Obviously the underlying numbers are still really, really good, but kind of what I've said forever is they're just kind of tactically flawed because of how they utilize their players. They're starting to get a little bit better. They're starting to utilize Enzo in his correct role as a deep-lying playmaker. They're starting to get guys in better positions. Obviously, Palmer has been huge for them in that 10 role, actually distributing, like Anthony mentioned in the last podcast. So there are things, and like Anthony mentioned, the Chelsea can definitely play on the break here. And they're also a really, really good counter-pressing team. So that's how they've snatched a couple goals out of both City and Arsenal as well, so they can definitely do that here against Liverpool in a match that might turn very end-to-end. We'll see. Liverpool's getting some guys healthy, but again, still no Mo Salah here, who's still very, very important to what Liverpool wants to do offensively. Nunez, Jota, and Diaz is a fine front three, but Salah obviously takes them to the next level. And also, Wataru Endo is still not there, who's their best ball-stopping midfielder, so I have Liverpool at -118, so Chelsea +1 for me.
It's kind of like what we said, right? Like, so Chelsea, when they played Everton, they didn't score. When they played Brentford, they didn't score. When they played Bournemouth, they didn't score. This was Bournemouth when they were a little bit more passive. They played Forest, they didn't score. They played Fulham, they scored once on a pen. When they've played Tottenham, they got 4. City, they scored 4. Brighton, they scored 3. Arsenal, 2. Liverpool, the first meeting, 1, but there was almost 2 XG. So, when they play these possession dominant teams, they're much better.
Okay, so those 3 matches, City, Spurs, and Liverpool, those are Wednesday, Thursday now. A nice 10-match slate in the midweek. Love it. West Ham and Bournemouth, the Hammers are +140 at home. Bournemouth is a slight underdog, +175. The draw here, +275. Safe to say the secret is out on Bournemouth, or was out on Bournemouth. They dropped 2 in a row to by an aggregate of 7-1 against some quality opposition. Is the secret back in on Bournemouth? Is it time to get back in on them? Doesn't look like it to me. Maybe if they lose here, Anthony, we can start having that conversation again. But this looks like my least favorite match on the board.
Yeah, it's really funny because I have a Bournemouth to finish above West Ham ticket from the beginning of the season, and it was like 3-1. And right now, I mean, the market thinks Bournemouth is better than West Ham, but the table, I'm not going to get paid.
But they're not going to make up that ground.
The book's not going to pay me out because the market says they're better because they're barely a road dog. Like realistically, the matchup Bournemouth wants to just boot it long now. They don't really like play out from the back as much. They do like a couple quick passes and then like, okay, let's play it long and then have somebody run off Solanke, which like has worked. They've definitely gotten better. But like, okay, Bournemouth is power rate as the 10th best team in the Prem. There's not really a way they're better than that. So there's no way that you can make this anything less than what it is. And West Ham, like we kind of know what they are, given their current situation with their injuries / absences. Like this attack is just kind of like, can Jared Bowen cook and can they win on some set pieces? They're not going to have Kudus. They're not going to have Paquetá still. So actually, will they get Kudus back now?
They probably will, honestly. It's been a while since
Kudus, right?
Ghana got knocked out.
Right.
That was terrible.
Tragic.
It was so tragic.
We're going to do another AFCON minute? Anyway.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, no, I just don't really think there's any way you can bet Bournemouth here and say like they're upwardly like getting a good number here. Like the beginning of the season, they closed to pick them at home. Now they're closing to pick them on the road. So yeah, I'm going to pass here. This is just like not a spot or a number I love. Even though I'd love to bet Bournemouth and say, go Cherries. Like I hate this West Ham team.
All right, let's wrap up the Premier League with Wolves and United. A rematch from a absolute debacle of a match on Monday Night Football Week 1, where Wolves were clearly the better team, had everything go against them in a game. I'm never gonna forget that one. It reminded me of that Brighton Manchester United game from a couple seasons ago, where Brighton ended up getting the win, and it just.
I thought you were talking about the match when they got the penalty awarded after the final whistle to win the match. Because I had Brighton in that match.
Yeah, that was tough.
Never seen that. That will never. I'm going to put that there. That will never happen to cost me a bet ever again, as long as I bet soccer. Where the final whistle will blow, and then VAR will come in and say, actually, there was a penalty 2 minutes ago. Penalty to Man United, 3-2 final.
Unbelievable. Wolves are a plus 175 home underdog. United plus 145, and a draw here I would pay out plus 260. Wolves have been in a decent nick of form with 3 wins and a draw in their last 4. They're safe mid-table team. I think a lot of people, including us, were wrong with where this team would be dancing. Mm-hmm. We thought they'd be dancing the relegation dance. They are dancing we're going to be on the beach by March 1st dance. Not out of the question here. Well, I mean, they win. they draw level with United on points. So these odds might not look, someone might, rub through that like cartoonish rub the eyes thing. But when you consider where these two teams are in the standings and how they played and the underlying metrics, they're really not that far off. So a bet on Wolves here, even as just like a slight home dog against United, is not crazy, BJ. I don't think, at least. But
I agree, but I can't do it. It's too short. It was unfortunate because I really did want to bet Wolves here in this spot because, and I mean, United didn't even look very good in the FA Cup either on Sunday as well.
Anthony had a big moment, his first goal.
Yeah. First goal of the season against Newport, who I believe is in League 2. Don't quote me on that. Yep. So good for him. First goal against the season comes against the 4th division team. Even United's match against Tottenham, they got kind of dominated. I know it didn't bear out in the final XG. They had a couple good transition moments, but outside of that, Tottenham just flipped the field on them and just kind of lived inside their final third. And I know they didn't create a lot of big scoring chances or anything like that. But, here's the problem is that, if you're in the online tactics community, United's press or whatever structure they want to use has been, picked apart with a fine-tooth comb. And basically what the tactical communities came down to is that United has no structure where they can press opponents effectively because of the personnel that they have assembled right now. So they're just stuck in this, do we press high because we don't have good ball-winning midfielders that can cover? We don't have good wingbacks that can aid in the press either. Even Rashford's not very good, in terms of his work rate out of possession. There's just so many things that are disjointed and wrong with Manchester United that Wolves can really pick them apart. So if I had to bet anything, I'd bet Wolves here. They've been really good at home. But here's the other thing with Wolves is that they punch up so well, but you just look at their overall underlying metrics, like they're a below average team in like almost everything. Despite how good they've been, in terms of their, how good Gary O'Neill has set them up tactically. Again, they're still at a -6 expected goal differential. Like they're still not that great of a team. So they've been obviously better at home than on the road. But so if I bet anything, it'd be Wolves. But I am passing because I think the number's about right.
Wolves for me. Betting it now. I know Hwang Hee-chan's going to be out, but you talked about it, right? Like, how much worse has Wolves actually been? If you take out penalties, Wolves this season have been like a tick worse than Man United across the whole league. And now they're like a home dog. Don't agree. I really think that Wolves should be favored here. So give me Wolves at home. Like I said, who do you think, by the way, still the leading goal scorer at Man United this season? Scott
McTominay.
5 goals. Yeah, and then you got so you got a lot of weird shit happening right now because, okay, first of all, they played like garbage today against Newport County. I don't care who the manager is. That is like next level alarming. I mean, this is a team of Man United who finished top 4 last year, and like we all agreed, like, okay, yeah, they ran good to get there. But this is still a team that finished 3rd in the Prem. And now they can't even outclass a 4th division team when they played their best 11, minus Rashford, which is where it gets weird, right? Evans was quote-unquote ill. Rashford was quote-unquote ill. Then they got the report coming out that there's disciplinary issues with Rashford, that he was like basically benched for the game. And look,
he was in a club the night before, like on Thursday night.
Exactly.
Apparently.
And here's the thing. Ten Hag has already banished Sancho to Dortmund. And I watched Dortmund today. Sancho looks great. Now it's the Bundesliga. But that guy couldn't have played for you.
Right.
So you're banning him. Now you got Rashford, who I'd argue is their next best attacker besides Bruno. And now you got him in problems. And like I said, Evans, he's been playing unbelievably bad for the last few weeks. And he gets sick, quote unquote. Maybe he got benched. And they're just kind of like making this up as they go. This whole situation is just like on the brink. And I think that there's a lot of downside risk for them, especially
smoldering
on the road. Like
Did you see the picture of Casemiro today?
I did not.
Looks like he's put on a few LBs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He's doing the.
Hey, we're not here to do that. Look,
I'm not. Whoa!
We all go through. I know.
It. Hand up. I've gone through many of those phases.
We are
but
not.
I'm just saying.
Soccer players, though, it should be noted.
But we're not professional soccer players. I sit on my couch for a living. Okay.
Yeah, United this year away from home, by the way, 1.7 expected goals allowed per 90, and we talked about it. Tottenham had that one great defensive showing, and I was like, wow, like maybe it's Romero and Van de Ven are back. 0.8 xG to United, no. In fact, it was just that United is really poor.
Okay, that's the Premier League, La Liga.
Can I just say one thing about La Liga? I don't have anything because there's 4 matches to make up matches from the teams that were at the Super Cup. Let's just talk Barcelona for just one quick second.
Yeah.
Is now where I say it's time to buy Barcelona at 14-1.
Buy low Barcelona?
But to win the league?
Yes. They're 10 points back. We have 17 matches left to play.
How good is Barcelona?
I don't know, quite frankly. That's a great question. They're clearly much worse defensively this season. They're not very good at defending crosses. They're bad in transition defense, but
that feels like
they create a ton of chances every single match, and they just can't put anything in the back of the net. Is what it's come down to. But I mean, Real Madrid, another late winner. Congratulations against Las Palmas. It happens every single weekend. Maybe they just run good the entire season and just have every single late winner, or maybe the underlying numbers catch up with them. Maybe Girona falls off.
Never gonna happen.
And then that opens the door for a potential run here from Barcelona. And hey, it already said, like, I read some of the quotes after, like Frankie de Jong was like, hey, it's our fault. It's not Xavi's fault. Like, we were the ones who made the mistakes out there. Like, he is not the problem or whatever. Like, we need to play better and everything. So there could be a galvanization behind this manager, for one last ride, maybe try to get him to stay. But yeah, it looks like Xavi's out at the end of the season. So, I mean, they're 14-1. I know it's a 10-point gap. They have a very easy schedule coming up where they can really make up some ground. So maybe they prioritize the Champions League. But for a team that's relatively healthy and still putting up like very, very clearly the best underlying numbers in Spain by a pretty wide margin, 14-1. Time to buy low Barcelona, Michael.
Here's some data on this. So since December started, Barcelona is plus 1.42 XG difference per 90. They have an even expected goal difference, and that's because they are conceding about a half goal extra over. Now, there was some regression looming from last season, like they ran like gods last year. But an attack, they're about a 0.7 goals behind their numbers per 90, so it's kind of remarkable. But the problem is that Real Madrid has improved as the season has gone on. They've actually deserved they've gotten lucky with how the games have gone, no doubt. But they've actually improved their underlying performances as well. So I'm not going to stop you from 14-1. I can't. But the team I'm buying, it's actually not Celta Vigo. I know that sounds crazy because we talk about them constantly. They've steadily kind of gotten worse, and so I need to stop betting them. But I have a disease and I can't. Is Rayo Vallecano? Vallecano is actually playing better. They've run bad, but they have really solid underlying numbers that are trending upward, and I think the market's short on them. But with that being said. Nothing for me in Spain.
All right. BJ, floor is yours. Quick minute on the African Cup of Nations, which is coming to the pointy end of the tournament.
We are currently in the round of 16 right now, finishing it up on Monday and Tuesday. Then we'll get to Friday. We'll start the quarterfinals. If you want some picks for Monday and Tuesday, if you're listening to this early Monday morning, Cape Verde and Mauritania are kicking off at noon Eastern time. We'll have over 2 goals there at around even money. Both teams over the last 2 years in Africa, their matches are averaging close to 2.5 expected goals. And a lot of goals have been scored at this African Cup of Nations, much more than we expected opposed to last tournaments. And I like Mali, which is now plus 135 against Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso has basically just been aided by a bunch of penalties. They have little to no attack going forward. They have no midfield. Mali's going to be able to run them over in the midfield. Tapsoba is a great defender, but Burkina Faso was very, very poor against Angola. They weren't that great against Algeria. Again, they've just been aided by a couple penalties here and there. So I think that number's way too short. Projected Mali close to minus 110. And again, if you want to follow me along with the African Cup of Nations, giving out picks every day on my Twitter, write-ups on unexpected goals, and join the Action Network Discord. We have a lot of fun in there, betting a lot of AFCON stuff. So if you want to follow along, that's where you can find it.
Absolute drama with Guinea getting the late winner. It was amazing.
Last kick of the game, Guinea gets the late winner. We all had Guinea, and we all have a 50-1 ticket on them. So DR Congo beat Morocco on penalties. They're going to be gassed going in this next match. We can get a 50-1 ticket into the semis. And we also have Nigeria and Mali as well. So it's been fun so far. Let's hope we can finish it out strong.
All right, underdogs. This parlay is going to come out to 78-1. Who wants to take Everton? I'm going to save them for the end of the show. Is that you, BJ? You want to take Everton? Go right ahead.
I'm always first to raise my hand with Everton. Love Everton in the spot. A team that's amazing out of possession. A team that can play 2 different styles, cause a lot of problems with Fulham if they want to try to either build out of the back or if they want to make this a transition game. Everton's still allowed the fewest big scoring chances in the Premier League, and Everton's got a huge advantage on set pieces. So toppies for me.
I'll go with Chelsea at plus 425 at Fortress Anfield, where Anthony has famously claimed nobody has ever won. So maybe Chelsea will become the first to ever do it. I think it's pretty simple here that this number is inflated on Liverpool. They're top of the table. Jurgen Klopp made that shock announcement. There's going to be, you think the Queen died again or something with the ceremonies that are going to be taking place.
Some in Liverpool would say that this is worse than the Queen dying.
Yeah, I have a lot of people in Liverpool. Basically, everybody in Liverpool would say
everybody
that.
Would.
Even the Everton fans.
Yeah. This is just a pretty simple, numbers way too wide on a really good team that punches up pretty well and plays a style conducive to stealing 3 points out of Fortress Anfield, spoiling a night out on Wednesday for a lot of Scousers. Anthony, what do you got?
I was kind of hoping that I would get to do the Chelsea thing, but you took
No,
Chelsea.
I wasn't going to let you have that. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't call me crying at 5 a.m. watching Australian Open about Jurgen Klopp leaving and then get to bet against him.
Time to fade your second favorite team, Anthony.
Yep.
Brent, I would never fade the bees. I'm gonna bet Brentford at 4-1. This team has had just an ungodly run. But I talk about those market-derived power ratings, and the market has them as the 16th best team in the Prem, with only Forest and the 3 obvious relegation teams below them in terms of expected points for the rest of the season. They have Tottenham 4th. I'm sorry, I disagree on both. I think Tottenham are overvalued. I think Brentford are undervalued. I think these teams are closer to like 6th and 11th, 12th. And thus, as a result, I know there's a huge goalkeeping edge for Spurs. But without Son, you're introducing a good amount of variance. With Tony back, we just don't know, what this Brentford attack can be right now. But I think the first match against Forest kind of showed you that they're capable of just being so much better because of what he adds on the break. And so against Tottenham team that's going to give so many chances away on the break, I think the Bees are live to steal this one at 4-1.
Okay, yeah, like I said, Brentford, Everton, and Chelsea pays out 78-1. Nice little midweek ticket for you guys as we all count down the days to the first bounce of the Australian Football League season coming up in mid-March. Best bets now for the midweek action in the Premier League. BJ, what do you got?
Brighton, Luton Town, over 3 goals at plus 105. The reality in this match is it's going to be very game state dependent. Luton Town is not a good team defensively, especially in their low block, to keep Brighton out with their build-up style. Luton Town's been the worst defensive team since the beginning of October. Last 12 Premier League matches, they've conceded 32.5 expected goals, 20 big scoring chances, and have only held 2 opponents under 1.5 expected goals. The biggest problem for them is, if they fall behind, they're conceding close to 2.2 expected goals per 90 minutes. So once that first goal goes in, this match can derive into complete chaos. De Zerbi has been playing a little bit more aggressive. Brighton wants to control the center parts of the pitch, which does leave space out wide, which is where Luton Town wants to get the ball. They've attempted the most crosses of anybody in the Premier League, which is kind of crazy considering how little of the ball they actually have. But they will have space out wide to actually create chances via crosses. So not a bad matchup for Luton Town offensively either. So projected 3.7 goals, so I like over 3 at plus 105.
I'll take my Toffees Everton plus 200 at Craven Cottage taking on Fulham. We've talked about this one a lot, so I can just pass it over to you, Anthony.
I'm going to stay in the same match and go with under 2.5 goals at minus 120, Everton and Fulham. I just think that given the situation with this Everton attack kind of running on fumes a little bit, Fulham's defense, it's been the same for 2 years now. The underlying numbers suggest that it's not nearly as bad as, their market rating would suggest. They concede a lot of big chances, but they do a good job of keeping teams out of the penalty area. And I think that the directness of Everton, Fulham's decently big at the back. They can handle the long balls, whatnot. So I think it's a decent matchup for them defensively. And they showed that in the last meeting when they held Everton decently well on the road at Goodison in the Cup. And then this Fulham attack just continues to be just an unreal fade for me down the stretch. And thus under 2.5 is where I end up. I think Everton's got some tired legs going on. Premier League unders never win, but this one might.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of Wondergoal. We will be back again on Wednesday to preview the weekend's action and get you guys set up for all that's coming our way overseas in the footy then. Busy stretch of time for us. So thank you for listening. Thank you if you've left a 5-star rating, and if you haven't, please do so. For Anthony and BJ, I'm Michael. Thank you to our sponsor, Bet365. And thank you to our tireless producer, Noah, on the back end. We will see you all in a few days.